Good morning, we'll make a start. Thank you for all joining us today on our second Tenant conference of the year. Similar to our conference in June, we are continuing to deliver our conference via a blended approach, with some of you joining us here in person in Dewars and others joining us live online, supported by our tenant and resident participation team just in the background there. So good morning to you online. Some of you may already know me, but for those that don't, I'm Elaine Ritchie. I'm a Senior Service Housing Manager within the Community Service, and I'm also joined here today by the Housing Convener, Councillor Tom McEwen, and some of the Housing Management team, Michelle Dow, Service Manager for Localities and Income Max, Nicola Lennon, Service Manager for New Builds and Improvements, Martin Smith, Service Manager for Specialist Service, and finally, and most importantly, our Finance Team Leader, Stephen Coyle. I've just covered that. As part of our ongoing improvements to tenant consultation and to demonstrate to the Scottish Housing Regulator, who regulates us and also ensures what we are doing is what we are meant to be doing, we must demonstrate that we're listening to our tenants and that they have a real influence in setting the rents that at a level that is required to deliver on their priorities. Today's conference provides a real opportunity for you to have a say and to be heard. The main purpose of today's conference is to ensure tenants are involved in determining the level of rent increase for 23-24 and to ensure we, as your landlord, continue to meet our obligations to you and your identified priorities for the service. However, we are fully aware of the current financial issues we're all facing as a result of the significant rise in the cost of living, partly due to inflationary and high energy costs and the ongoing impact of COVID-19. And that is why it's even more important for us to make sure our tenants' voices are heard and that rent setting and priority process, which includes today's event, provides us significant opportunities to do this. We've always had a strong and will continue to have a strong partnership approach when it comes to working with our tenants and providing opportunities to influence decision making. We've also taken the opportunity today to shine a spotlight on some of the work that we are progressing as a result of the decisions you've made in previous years regarding priorities for the service. I hope you enjoy today's event. There is no planned fire alarm for today, so if there is a fire alarm go off, please exit near the nearest fire exit there. The toilets are just as you come in, and we've got a really packed agenda, but we will stop for tea and coffee throughout. So before I invite Michelle to come up to do her presentation, before I invite the convener, the most important person, to open today's event, I'll quickly go over our agenda. So at 11:10, we're just nearly there, we're going to have a presentation by Michelle on the rent level options and service charge to 23-24. It's quite a beefy, in-depth presentation, so we'll take it as slow as we can. There's quite a lot of information in that. We'll then stop where we can and answer any questions or queries that you might have. We'll then stop for a comfort break. There's lots of nice biscuits and tea and coffee. We'll come back at 12 and we'll have several presentations regarding our digital inclusion project, the work of our Safer Communities team, our estate-based initiatives, and information on our really successful Older Persons project. And then there'll be a final opportunity to ask any other questions. Okay. So, without further ado, I'd like to invite our Housing Convener, Councillor Tom McEwen, to open today's conference.
Thank you, Elaine, and it's actually great to be here in person today. I think the last event that we had was coincided with a meeting of the full council at the same time, so I obviously had to be at the full council meeting instead, but I think you got a rather nice recording of myself to do this introduction previously. So it's great to be here. You know, this is one of the most important things the housing service does, is to actually come here, meet our tenants and discuss what is important to you. Because only in working in partnership with yourselves will we get the housing service right to meet your needs. The information for today was released previously, and there were some people have submitted questions already that will be answered by the team during today's events. But obviously, if you have any questions at all during the event, then please raise them to us and we'll do our best to answer them or get back to you if that's necessary. As you can see from the room, we have all these different stalls and staff from the different parts of this service. These are all really hard-working staff who provide an excellent housing service to you, especially compared to some other councils in Scotland. We have a great new build programme where we are ahead of the Scottish Government targets in new build properties, and we also invest in improvements and upgrades to your homes to meet not just climate change ambitions, but to renew older properties that we've had from the 1960s and 70s and bring them up to modern standards with triple glazing and new kitchens and bathrooms, etc. And make these houses suitable for you as an individual, so that as your needs change when you get older, that your property you're in suits you and suits your needs. We have the third lowest rents in Scotland, and that affordability is really important to us, and we use an affordability tool to actually to get to that point, and we have a rent proposal for you today to discuss, and for all tenants in Perth and Kinross to have a say in. That affordable rent gives a balance not just between affordability, but providing you with the high quality housing service that you get in the high quality homes that we want to provide for you. So that's really what I've got to say to here today. So if you realistically, it's about engagement, it's about speaking up, and it's about telling us what you did and what you like. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, can I say a personal thanks to you for attending today, both in person and online, to this key event in our rent setting proposals. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview and background as to how we consider rent level options in Perth and Kinross and what is taken into consideration. We will look in more detail at what each of the proposed options would mean for you, our tenants, both in terms of investment in your home and, importantly, affordability. As Elaine mentioned, there will also be a question and answer session. So in the first instance, here's a quick overview of what we intend to cover in this presentation. Some of you may be familiar with the process and some of the slides, but for those who are not, and perhaps joining us for the first time, it allows you to see what influences the approach we take and the joint partnership working taken between us as your landlord and you as tenants. Believe it or not, this approach actually starts in April. We will have a quick look at the charter outcomes, the budget setting process, together with feedback on your priorities as tenants. We will then look at budget pressures and savings which have been identified, moving on to a high-level overview of the three proposed rent level options before moving on to what happens next. This slide shows We thought it would be useful in the first instance to give you an understanding of how our rent levels compare nationally based on our annual submission as part of the annual return on the Charter. The first column shows the size of property, the second column showing PKC's average levels, and the third showing the national average for 2021-22, and the final column showing the levels in Perth and Kinross. As you can see, before we take into account any increases for 2022-23, we still come out favourably, and we will look at this in more detail for national and local comparisons later on in this presentation. This slide shows the breakdown within the HRA of how much in every pound of rent you pay is spent on various services. Repairs and maintenance amounts for 31 pence in every pound, and this covers areas such as emergency repairs, day-to-day repairs, adaptations and voids and capital investment. Neighbourhood services equates for 29 pence in every pound to support this area, and this covers your locality housing teams and includes, for example, housing officers and housing assistants, sheltered housing, allocations, housing options and some aspects of housing support. Financing debt. These are our loan charges for past and future borrowing for the capital programme, and they amount to 24 pence in every pound. Contribution to the capital programme amounts to 8 pence in every pound, and you may hear this called CFCR. Support services. Again, this amounts to 8 pence in every pound, and for example, covers other services which support housing which aren't based in the actual service. So for example, legal services and human resources. So as well as being clear and transparent with you, our own tenants, at how a high level we spend your rent money, we actively encourage in-depth scrutiny through our Housing Revenue Account Working Group. The group has been established since 2018, and the slide shows some of the areas the group have looked at. Unfortunately, due to COVID, the group has been unable to meet until relatively recently and will be reviewing their work plan for the years ahead. We would be delighted to welcome on board any new tenants who would be interested in joining this group, or indeed would just like to hear more in the first instance. If you're interested, please contact one of the tenant and resident participation representatives at the conference or drop us an email. So I mentioned the charter outcome. The Scottish Social Housing Charter sets out specific outcomes in the way in which they expect landlords to consult and engage with tenants around rent setting. These are detailed under Charter Outcome 14 and 15 and state that a balance must be struck between the level of services provided, the costs of those services, and how far both current and future tenants can afford them. The money from you, our tenants, rents pays for around 94% of the services we deliver to you as your landlord. Any changes to these services can impact on the costs and therefore result in rent levels. It's therefore important we know what your priorities are as tenants, the impact on rent levels, and importantly, affordability. So our consultation and engagement process, and some of you seasoned pros will be well familiar with this. This is what we call our STEERS approach, or in other words, strategic tenant engagement around rent setting. This approach was developed a number of years ago in partnership with you, our tenants. We were this year able to return fully to our normal approach, in which all tenants were issued with a survey in April 2022, asking them to tell us about their priorities when it came to spending their rent money. The feedback from this survey was then presented to you at your summer conference in June this year. Ongoing dialogue took place between then and September, and the information from this was used to develop the rent option proposals being put to you, our tenants, today. What will happen next will be that in November, all tenants will be issued with a rent level options voting survey, providing detailed information on what each of the options means for them. We want to hear from as many tenants as possible, so we will be adopting a range of measures to ensure that this is achieved, including targets for our locality housing teams, support from our tenant and resident participation team, and repairs and improvements, together with an external support from an external contractor and an online consultation hub. So how does the budget process, setting process work? The feedback from the Rent Priorities Survey, together with the Tenant Conference in June, was then considered alongside service pressures identified by Housing Management Team and is used to develop the HRA spending priorities for the next 5 years. We considered the impact of both pressures and savings against the Housing Revenue Account business plan to assess both the short and long-term implications and ensure the ongoing financial health of the service. These proposals were then submitted to our senior management team in advance of being presented to you today. The previous slide outlined how we will always look to identify where possible savings within the Housing Revenue Account, for example, as a result of new or more effective ways of working. It's important to note that since 2016-17, the HRA has made £1.35 million of savings in the following areas. The transformation of our housing repair service allowed us to make £500,000 of savings. In terms of general efficiencies, so non-related staffing budgets, so looking at budgets that had already been set, where as a result of a small transformation project, new ways of working, resulting in the budget being reduced, amounted to £342,000. Efficiencies in relation to mobile working amounted to £239,000. And finally, income generation. So an increase in the amount of money we have brought in has resulted in £269,000 of savings. So what are the proposed savings for this financial year, as shown in the table on the screen? In the first instance, through effective vacancy management across the service, we're looking to save £100,000 in terms of staff slippage. Again, through our commitment to look at pre-existing budget and ways in which we can deliver services more effectively, a savings in terms of general efficiencies of £150,000. Finally, an increase in council house rents, and this is based on the lowest increase which will be presented later in the presentation. The figures moving forward on this line are based on our rent strategy, which we will discuss later. We are committed each and every year to identify any potential areas where savings could be made without impacting on the service delivery to you, our tenants. As well as proposed savings, Housing Management team have considered what additional current and future pressures need to be considered. Many of these are out with our control and remit. These are outlined in the tables on the 2 following slides. An increase in staffing costs amounting to £706,000. This is as a result of the nationally agreed pay award, which is not determined by Perth and Kinross Council. Moving on to adjustment to bad and doubtful debt. This is directly attributable and linked to our rent arrears levels. We try and set this to within 5% of the income we are due to bring in that year. This has been increased to reflect the fact that we will be due to collect more income next year as a result of the rent increase. Movement to loan charges is changes to the level of payments we make for current and future borrowing. We are not planning any additional budget provision for this immediate financial year. For 23-24, we're proposing an additional £281,000 to cover the general increase in the cost of materials. So in other words, the materials to undertake repairs to your homes, etc. All our homes are now required to have electrical inspection condition reports, and this is both a financial pressure and a capacity issue. Hence the reason for the additional budget and staff resources identified for the future. This cost for 23-24 is being funded from reserves in order to minimise the impact of the rent increase on tenants next year. Tackling climate change, zero carbon, an important area of work, and we've identified a pressure of £44,000 to allow us to progress with this. Service maintenance and compliance costs have also been identified as a pressure, whilst also remaining a statutory responsibility for us as your landlord. As well as an increase in materials, there has also been an increase in contract prices, with £139,000 identified for 23-24. Like you, our tenants, we have also been subject to an increase in the costs of utilities, with £150,000 identified as a pressure. Some further pressures are again outlined in the table below: planned maintenance staff, additional staff required to take forward the planned maintenance programme in our properties. This cost for 23-24 again has been funded from reserves to minimise the impact of the rent increase on tenants next year. A senior project officer to take forward the multi-storey strategy, developing the programme of works that are required in these properties. This cost is being funded from reserves in 23-24 for similar to minimise the impact on rent increases for tenants next year. Estate-based initiatives are a successful project, making a real difference out in communities. A permanent increase of £50,000, which increases the overall budget for our localities to £200,000. Antisocial behaviour coordinator. As part of the budget approved in January 2022, a motion was approved for enhanced measures to tackle antisocial behaviour. This has been funded from reserves for this year and next year, and now requires permanent funding from 2024-25. Fire sprinkler systems, £12,000, and this is for the annual cost of maintaining systems. A small amount for our asset management database, and that's ongoing maintenance costs of the database on an annual basis. Finally, in relation to contribution to the capital programme, we are planning a reduction in this area, as you can see. However, this will not impact on the capital programme or the investment, as you will hear later on. Some of you may be aware that Perth and Kinross Council developed a 5-year rent strategy. This strategy is reviewed on an annual basis, as its purpose is to ensure that fluctuations will be minimised year on year and provide for a more planned and consistent approach, and allows both tenants and the council to plan for this. However, each year we will continue to undertake consultation and engagement with you, our tenants, based on your priorities. So, moving on to the nitty-gritty, the proposal for service charges before we go on to rent. So before we give you a more detailed overview of the proposed rent level options and how these compare nationally and locally, we need to cover the proposals in relation to service charges. Some tenants who are here today may be impacted by this, either through a decision they have made, for example to join our garden maintenance scheme, or where the accommodation in which they live is subject to the service charge. This table outlines the current charge and the proposals for next year. It is worth pointing out that the service charge levels are based on full cost recovery for the cost of the service. As you can see from the table below, at the moment the only area where there is a slight increase is in relation to retirement complexes, and all other charges have remained the same or reduced. In relation to service charges though for heating and lighting, some of you may be aware that they are based on the cost of the service for the year before. So basically the costs that we've put through were for last year, where we haven't had the spike in the increase in the utility costs. So what we would like to do today is for any tenant who is subject to one of the heating and lighting service charges, we'd welcome an informal chat with you at the end of the conference about some potential other proposals or options that the housing management team have come up with. Okay. So just a quick look at rent increase comparisons. I mean, earlier in this year, earlier in this presentation, we looked at Perth and Kinross Council's rent levels and compared them with the national average. We thought it would be useful to look at rent increase comparison levels over some neighbouring local authorities over a number of years and the national average. It is fair to say that rent setting level options for the last financial year for probably most local authorities were particularly challenging and were impacted by the pandemic and a general increase in costs which has continued. So I mentioned earlier in terms of the reduction and we gave you a commitment in terms of the capital programme investment. So what we can assure you is that regardless of the option that's chosen by our tenants, it will not impact on the capital programme, with guaranteed investment in central heating and new wiring of 0.9 million, property refurbishment 3.6 million, kitchen upgrades 4.2 million, bathroom upgrades 1.1 million, external fabric 3.9, energy efficiency 1.8, multi-storey flats 2.3 million, environmental improvements 0.9, and sound insulation 0.4 million, and structural repairs of 1.3 million. So, what are the rent level option proposals being presented to you, our tenants? Option 1 is a 2.2% increase. Option 2 is a 2.9% increase. And finally, option 3 is a 3.2% increase. So regardless of the option chosen, under all three options, your tenants will see investment in the following areas outlined in the slide. Some of these we mentioned earlier in the presentation as proposed pressures. It is your rent level vote which will determine how much money we will spend on priorities and level of increased investment. So, what are the option details and what's the difference for each option for you as our tenants? So you can see from this table the impact each of the options would have. So thinking about the guaranteed investment I've already mentioned, if option 1 were to be the preferred level, this would see additional buyback funding of £15 million over 5 years. This would lead to an average weekly increase of between £1.08 and £1.92. Option 2, 2.9% increase, as well as referring back to the guaranteed investment, would also see additional buyback funding of £20 million over 5 years, but would also see additional funding for planned maintenance of £150,000 and enhanced measures for tackling antisocial behaviour. This would result in an average weekly increase of between £1.43 and £2.53. And finally, option 3 at 3.2%, again with the guaranteed investment previously mentioned, would see £25 million over 5 years in relation to buyback funding, £200,000 for planned maintenance and £80,000 for antisocial behaviour. This would result in an average weekly increase of between £1.58 and £2.79. All of the information given to you in the last 2 slides will be included in your voting survey that should be with you shortly. I think it's due to arrive the 31st of October, so they should be with you shortly. So let's go on to one of the most important aspects, affordability for you, our tenants. It's vitally important, in addition to understanding the impact on investment levels, that we all understand the impact on affordability. This table provides you with what average rent levels in Perth and Kinross would be in April 2023 for each of the options, and compares them with the rent levels of 3 of our neighbouring authorities, Dundee, Angus and Fife, with an estimated increase applied to their rent levels. As you can see, all 3 rent increase options compare well, even with the higher level of increase. As a social housing provider in Perth and Kinross, it's particularly important that we can demonstrate how affordable our rents are compared to other providers in the area, so other real housing opportunities for tenants or people seeking housing. This table shows our average rent levels with each of the proposed increases compared to the average rent level of 6 housing associations, all of whom have properties throughout Perth and Kinross. This direct local comparison is clear evidence of how affordable our rents are currently and would be under any of the increases being proposed. As you can see, average rents under any of the options are between 20 to 38% cheaper with Perth and Kinross Council, and the overall average 23 to 24% lower. This will be the last one, you'll be pleased to know. When considering what is an affordable rent, we talk about affordability, so how do we determine what's affordable? So there's no set calculation, however, the housing needs demand analysis estimates that it should be about around 25% of an individual's income being used to meet their housing costs. In reality though, it ranges from between 25 to 30%, as shown in recent research. The first table above shows, based on minimum wages over 25, minimum wage over 21 and the living wage, in Perth and Kinross Council, the percentage of their income residents would be paying under each of the options. As a comparison, we've also provided the level for other LAs and registered social landlords. Please bear in mind that the local income levels do not include any housing benefit entitlement. So when we're talking about 87% of tenants could afford our rent levels, it is highly likely that the other 13% would be entitled to some additional support. So that's 87% of residents in Perth, tenants in Perth and Kinross can afford our rent levels without any assistance. So as you can see, all of the options come within the housing needs demand analysis estimate of 25%. So I'll now hand you back over to Elaine, who will chair the question and answer session. Thank you.
Hello, I cleared this actually with Stephen. Now, you mentioned about the allocation to paying the repayment of loans. Now, Highland Council have obviously been doing their homework a little, because they have come up with the fact that over the next 2 to 3 years, because of the increase in loan charges, it will have to come off the capital investment programme. And as you know, the plan for housing for 2000 today, 5 years away. Now, if that happens, and the Scottish Government are not actually planning to increase, in fact it hasn't been agreed yet, but they may not increase the amount that local authorities receive and what we receive, how will that affect the house building programme in the future?
Yeah, the interest rates is a sort of challenging issue at the moment. Over the past, well, as everybody knows, over the past sort of few months, the interest rates have been going up and down, and it changes probably on a weekly basis for us. Our interest repayments are based on the overall council general fund as well, so we're on the same rate as the council general fund, so we don't get charged a different rate than what the general fund budget is, which is good, because that's not always the case in other local authorities. So I think this year it's okay because we're not borrowing as much, because I think the council borrowed a lot of money last year when interest rates were a lot lower, which meant that they didn't need to borrow as much money this year, so we're still paying on favourable rates. But based on because of the mini budget and the changes in terms of the sort of interest rates and government borrowing, etc., that has increased. But we work continually with our corporate finance colleagues to try and minimise any impact of increase in interest rates on our borrowing. We look at reprofiling the debt. There's also things in theory this year we can pay back more loan repayments than what we'd actually due to pay, which then helps us in future years by not increasing the amount of borrowing costs or the amount of increased borrowing in the future. It's not impacting on our capital programme as yet. I think we need to understand how long this interest rate fluctuation is going to be for. Short term we're okay, as you saw from the slides. The next 2 years we're not due to increase the borrowing, and we'll continually work with corporate finance to make sure that there's minimal impact on the capital programme. Can't guarantee that going forward because we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months' time. Probably don't even know what's going to happen in 6 weeks' time, Gerald, to be honest with you. But we'll try and make sure that any impact is minimal in the tenants in the short term, and if there is a longer term sort of issue with interest rates, then we'll review everything at that point and then come back to tenants and sort of make you aware of the impact and what options that are available for us. I hope that sort of helps a little bit.
And I mean, I do have a response to the question that was actually asked. Sorry, I do have a response here to the question that was actually asked on the 17th of October, shows that I know it's actually from there.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There was one question that came up about buyback funding being returned. Is buyback funding returning bought back council houses into public housing?
Yeah. So it's buying back ex-council properties on the open market. And we've got a target of roughly about 30 that we aim to buy back each year. No other questions?
It's the same as in the buyback questions. When you buy back the property, I take it that these people have to vacate the property and find somewhere else to live.
No, we buy back the property, and the proviso is that we don't have to rehouse that person. We don't do that. It's mostly people, unfortunately, who's passed away, and that's the properties that we get back. We don't rehouse the person. We've done it on the odd occasion where there's a really complex case, but it's vacant possession that we get it, and it's a property that we then use to allocate through the Common Housing Register.
I'm thinking of people, like families that are already living in a house and can't afford to pay the mortgage.
All right. Okay, that's not our buyback, that's called a mortgage to rent. That's a different scheme, and that's a scheme provided by the Scottish Government to support local authorities, to support families that are running into mortgage difficulties that can no longer afford to pay their payments. And we've not had quite a lot of success through that scheme. It's a scheme that goes through the Scottish Government and then it comes to the local authority. It's very different from our buyback process, if you know what I mean.
If they have to vacate their property.
They don't have to, through the mortgage to rent, they don't have to vacate the property, but there's quite a lot of criteria that goes into that, and they have to apply to the Scottish Government and work with the local CAB in order to see if they're entitled to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's a bit complicated, but I'm happy to have a further discussion with you.
Thank you.
Another question from Dave, who's online. Is there flexibility involved in view of potential less public spending on Westminster agenda and potentially more if a change in Westminster government via a general election?
Very political. Stephen, you want to answer?
Yeah, I'm quite happy. Whatever happens, the housing revenue account is a ring-fence self-financing account. So in terms of any impacts and political changes, it doesn't impact directly on the service that you get from us. So I think that's probably the easiest way to sort of say that. There's no direct day-to-day influence on the service that you would receive.
Okay, I hope everyone managed to get a wee cup of tea and a nice shorty biscuit. They're really, really nice. I think I've had maybe one. Michelle, how many?
We'll keep that between you and I.
Okay, we've now got a couple of presentations that we'd like to deliver, and these are projects that we've implemented as a result of your feedback. So the first one is our digital inclusion project about getting online, and it's from Kev. Where are you, Kev?
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin Heller. I work in the Digital Inclusion Project, which is part of tenant participation. I also cover South Perth, but I'm talking about the specialism, which is digital inclusion. So, digital inclusion has been going for quite a while now. Way back in 2016, as part of the Tenant survey, the satisfaction survey, there was a question right at the end: would you like help getting online? And lots of tenants said yes. And that's what the Digital Inclusion Project came out of. So I started working on that in 2016-17, and I started mostly working one-to-one with tenants. So the tenants that told us they needed help, I would go and visit them, usually in their house, so it's comfortable, they're using their own internet and stuff like that, or maybe a local library or something if their house wasn't suitable, or in some cases they didn't have Wi-Fi in the house at that point. So I would go work one with them, find out why they had asked for help. So in a lot of cases, it's people whose family have moved away and they wanted to keep in touch. So I'd help them, social media, email, that kind of thing. But there was all sorts of reasons. And then once they'd got that hook, so they're now able to video call their grandchildren in Australia or whatever, we would then work through other things that they could do online. The Scottish Government had a checklist of things that if you can do them, then your class is digitally included. So we'd work through them. Some of them they weren't interested in, but we'd touch on it anyway. And then at the end, I would talk to them about the things they could do as a council tenant online. So things like paying the rent, reporting repairs and stuff like that. So that was the process, and then I would work with them to that point, and then leave them to fly, as one guy here has done. But I'm always there if they need a bit of support after that. So the kind of things we're doing, we're communicating, as I say, email, social media, information online, so they're finding out when the next bus is into Perth, or what was the football scores last night, or what time's EastEnders on tonight, all the kind of general essential stuff you need off the internet. There's also transactions, so shopping online, banking, problem solving. The boiler's not working, kind of find a tutorial online to show me how to reset it or whatever. And then, as I say, worked on to doing the council stuff at the end. That was all done one-to-one. We also had drop-in sessions at various places, like Letham Centre, Letham Community Centre, and now I do them in our sheltered housing complex, or supported housing complexes. And the locals will come in and get 10 minutes, like, how to fix this, or if there's little problems. Okay. But we've now moved on to a kind of newer project, and I'll explain a wee bit of why that's happening. And a big part of it is COVID hit, and people are stuck indoors largely. Services are now provided more and more online, and if you can't access them, you're struggling. So Connecting Scotland came along, which is a Scottish Government scheme whereby they gave out tenants, no, not just tenants, but some of our tenants were lucky enough to receive either an iPad, which is a tablet, or a Chromebook, which is like a miniature laptop, and a year's worth of free Wi-Fi, which has been extended, I've just heard recently, to 2 years. So it was a great success at helping some of our tenants and other local residents to get online and keep up with people that were already online, although it was quite difficult to provide support at the time because we weren't allowed into people's houses or to meet up. But enough people benefited from it that when we had one of the equivalents of today and people were deciding the rents, one of the options was to provide more digital inclusion, and that got voted through. So that's what led to the Getting Online PKCT project. So, and as it says there, we're working to get some of our most socially and digitally excluded tenants online. Okay. So, I'm still working in digital inclusion. I'm still doing this project on behalf of council tenants, but we've also got a Lead Scotland in working with us as a partner agency. They worked in Perth and Carross anyway doing digital inclusion, but they aimed at people with disabilities and carers. but now they're working with us to help tenants. We've got 1 member of staff and 1/4 of a member of staff that are working on this project in Perth and Kinross with us. And I'll explain a little bit in a minute about how that works. We bought, with the money that was put towards it, we bought 236 devices, so that's tablets, but it's a company called Alcatel. So we've got 236 of them, and they have a SIM card that gets inserted with them, and that gives the tenant a year's free worth of Wi-Fi. So if somebody's successful to get put onto this scheme, we will take their device to them, their tablet. There's a user guide and a little a user agreement that we get them to sign, just saying that they'll use the device themselves. They're not going to just pop it on eBay and sell it off or anything like that. So yeah, we're working with Lead, and Lead are mostly going in for people that are at almost a starter level. So they're doing things like device familiarity, how do you switch it on, what's a touch screen, how do you swipe, etc. They're doing stuff like online safety. A lot of people are put off about going online because they hear the horror stories of getting ripped off by people. But there's lots of things we can help them, and Lead are leading on that. Help people to know what is a scam, what to avoid, etc. They do the basic searching, Googling, as I say, how much did St Johnstone win by at the weekend or whatever. And email. Email's vital. Although you might not email anyone, you need an email address to sign up to Facebook, Twitter, anything that you need. So they're doing all that kind of thing. If someone comes in at a more advanced stage or wants to work through these things with Lead, they could be passed to myself, and I'll work through sort of further skills like workplace skills, like how can I do a letter, how can I send this and that. Online services, so things like filling in forms. I've got one guy at the moment who's a youngster who's applying for university, so helping them fill in forms for that. And things like online chats. And there's grey areas that we work out depending on the tenant, so things like social media, streaming music and TV, shopping and banking. And to get put onto this service, you need a housing colleague to refer you to myself. There's an online referral form, so speak to a housing, but if you're not sure who that is, come and grab me or find me on, and I can help you get the right person. So far we've had 27 referrals, and most of them have been seen by Lead at the moment. And they passed on a case study which is quite good for showing the benefits of the scheme. And there's a lady, I'll call her R. She was referred by her housing officer due to digital isolation. Lead have worked with R, who has underlying health issues, which means she struggles to go out in public. She had no digital skills, but she was very keen to learn. She'd had a tough time at school, so had a very low self-esteem. Lead have been in working with her and encouraging her to solve problems herself, and her confidence has grown with each session, and she's surprised by her quick progress. And R said, "I'm loving this. I want to learn. I want to keep my brain active and keep doing more. This is a fabulous service. I can't believe I've been lucky enough to receive this. I can now speak with my family and friends abroad. It's going to make a world of difference." So I think that's quite good, to showing that a device can open up the world for you. There's other tenants on the scheme, as I say. One of them's online on a forum for knitting. So people are sharing patterns and stuff like that, whereas before she'd need to go to a knitting shop to find stuff. So she's loving that. There's another one that's recently kind of finding it harder to get out and about, and she's doing online shopping now and getting it delivered to the door. The one I just mentioned about the child studying. One person has problems with their eyesight, and they're using their hands basically. But they have a phone and they keep pressing the wrong button. Now they've got a tablet with a bigger screen, they're getting on great with it. And they're also using the text-to-speech function, so when you speak, it translates it, and so you can say what time's the next bus into Perth, and it will tell you rather than having to try and type it, which is often a problem. Okay. And that's pretty much the scheme, if anyone's got any quick questions. And there's also a website there, www.pkc.gov.uk/DIP, where you'll find more information about all the digital inclusion work that we're doing as tenants. Okay.
I've got one question from the online community. Asked a few months ago of the possibility of the council setting itself up as an internet provider, was told trying it in the north of England, what chance of trying it here? It would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's a they're of charity. That's what it's a charity doing it in a place called Darlington, and they're providing internet rather than you go into one of the big providers, and it's done socially. But they've had a lot of problems, and so I think people are letting them work through their problems first, and then seeing what's the best way to do it. So I keep in touch with them, and I get updates from them, and then in future, if it's something that we can look at, we can do it then. But at the moment, they're going through all the problems for a bit for the rest of us, so we can avoid the worst of it. Question.
Hi there, my name's Justin. I work in welfare rights. I'm just wondering if you can take referrals from other parts of the council as well.
Yeah, pretty much. When you fill in the referral form as a member of staff, it asks bits of information. As long as they're a council tenant, this is aimed purely at council tenants. But yeah, we'll take referrals for anyone, and if it fits, like which most people will, if they need a device, and you make that clear in the referral. So yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Any more? No? Okay.
Okay, can I hand over to the next one, which is Sandy, who's going to give us some more information on the work of the Safer Communities team. Thanks, Sandy.
Thanks, Elaine. Good morning, or sorry, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Sandy Robertson, a Safer Communities officer with the Safer Communities team. This is going to be pretty tricky. I've got 10 minutes to speak about my team, and I can rattle on about our team for absolutely hours. So this might be a little bit tricky for me to do this. So I'm just getting my notes all sorted out. So what we've got under my banner, the Safer Community team, is we've got the Safer Community Wardens who are here today, and what we refer to as the St Martin's side of the business. St Martin's House is where we're located, and we get involved in lots of different things. So today, although we've got the Wardens under a banner, I'm going to concentrate pretty much on the St Martin's side of the business. That includes, as it is in the slide, antisocial behaviour, high-risk offenders, serious and organised crime, drug-related issues, human trafficking and exploitation, intelligence sharing with police and other agencies, fly tipping, graffiti, vulnerable people. Vulnerable people includes our young persons, and also includes working with people who are victims of scams and other types of financial harm. So prior to April of this year's St Martin's House pretty much compromised. I've got one supervisor underneath me, and he had 4 coordinators to deal with these issues, and each of the coordinators had a specific group, their theme that they worked for, a key responsibility. That include the high-risk offenders, drug-related issues and intelligence sharing, fly tipping and graffiti, and also dealing with antisocial behaviour complaints that are linked to addresses. And all the other stuff that doesn't fit into that, we all muck in and help out. So in April 2022, additional funding was made available to tackle antisocial behaviour affecting our tenants, and we interviewed several candidates for the new post, all of whom gave good interviews. However, Yvonne Weir, who's here today, was pretty much the outstanding candidate, I would have to say, and a lot of that is due to Yvonne's previous experience of being a housing officer with Letham. That opportunity to bring Yvonne into the team essentially came from yourselves, the tenants and residents groups, and also the housing management team. So we have to place on record our thanks to everyone for giving us the funding to have an extra member of staff. We appreciate it a lot more because, especially at this time when you're seeing a lot of increased pressures on agencies, this morning I'm seeing more pressures put on the police. Although we're not the police, we're not the council police, we do work very closely with the police. They're co-located with us at St Martin's House, and sometimes we perhaps take on things that traditionally the police would take on, or lead on, but we always use the police to help out. Kev touched upon COVID, the impact that that's had. I think we're probably only seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of behaviour. As I said, we speak and work closely with services for young people, and I think some of the behaviours that some of the young people are getting is because they've missed out on that growing up opportunity for the last 2 years. So, like I say, we're probably tip of the iceberg for some of the behaviours that might be coming through. Since Yvonne has joined the team, as it says there, she focuses on pretty much antisocial behaviour complaints, mostly, predominantly with PKC tenants. She's not exclusively ring-fenced it, but predominantly she'll take on the PKC tenants. 75 cases this year, so since May. 47 of those cases have been for PKC tenancies. So currently Yvonne has 14 open cases and successfully closed 61. We don't sort of record inquiries about antisocial behaviour. If someone phones up for a bit of advice but they don't want to take it further, we don't actually record it. We've dealt with that. But when we've opened up a case which involves likes of sending out letters to neighbours, making inquiries with the police, that is a case. Some of these cases can be opened and closed in a week with given advice, or a very quick visit to the person who's causing the problems. Some of the other cases can be a lot longer, a lot more complex due to various issues. But again, Yvonne, she's brought a wealth of experience with our team. And I have to probably try and embarrass her a little bit. I've known Yvonne for quite a lot of years, worked with her in several cases, but she gave a cracking interview, and it wasn't until we got her down into the team that appreciated how good she was at her job. So she's been great, joined the team, and made a big contribution to us already. In addition to Yvonne, we've got Kim O'Brien. Kim actually came through the ranks from the Community Warden Service. Again, I didn't appreciate how good Kim was at her job either, or how good a person she was at doing things until she actually joined us. So she's been, I think it's maybe 2 years Kim's been with us now. So we now have 2 dedicated officers dealing with house-to-house complaints, if you like. So one house that's affecting other people, 2 people to work at that. This has been great. As you imagine, one extra person to such a small team means that all the other coordinators are able to focus on their line of work, like I say, the high-risk offenders, the drug issues, the intelligence sharing is quite a lot of involvement in that and a lot of work. So for them to be able to focus on those things a lot more has been great. So also allowed Kim to concentrate on some of the more serious antisocial behaviour cases that she had open. If you're going for an antisocial behaviour order, an ASBO as we call it, it involves quite a lot of preparation work, recording of incidents, creating timelines, police reports, taking statements from people. So it can be quite a lengthy process. So having the 2 dedicated officers again helps us to get through our workload, for want of a better word. So and also we have a quicker response time to dealing with antisocial behaviour complaints, because the pressures on housing officers as well, for them to free up time to go and do a visit, and we try to get out and visit as quick as we can because we try to do early intervention. We feel that if you can get in and nip it in the bud, so to speak, it saves a lot of hassle at the other end. So with the 2 officers, they can link up and go off if a housing officer is not available. So other activity that we're involved in, I'll be showing you shortly, which is our antisocial behaviour strategy. Let's say that'll be in the next slide. But things that we've been doing, reviewing all our paperwork for easy read. We're aware that people have learning difficulties, and therefore if we're working with people, either complainer or people who are causing the problems, we have to put things in as simple terms as we can to make it easier for them to understand. So we've been working on that. We also chair tasking meetings. A tasking meeting is basically a multi-agency meeting of likes of the police, registered social landlords, housing, child protection, waste management, the Integrated Drug and Alcohol team, or any other agency we feel that can be pulled into these things. We're actually doing those in 5 different localities now. Again, Letham, Tillich, Fairfield, Bertha Park, Perth City and Scone, Highland Perthshire, Blairgowrie, East Perthshire, South Perthshire and Kinrossshire. So right across the board we have specific meetings to address antisocial behaviour. The Noise app, so essentially that is an application you can download on your phone via our team. You get permission from us that allows you to make recordings of your noisy neighbours, submit it to ourselves, we can review it and give advice. Sometimes we get noise complaints, but it might be down to the structure of the building, sound insulation, etc. And it's not antisocial, but we would give advice as to what to do with that. Since we started using it in 2020, we've had over 500 registered users. We currently have 153 of those and closed 335 cases. The Noise app is also being used by our colleagues in environmental health as well. As I said before, we're co-located with the police. We continue to do work with them. If we haven't come up with something new every week or a different way to approach things, I'd be very surprised. We're always thinking about different approaches. What works better? Is it always enforcement? No, we know that's not the case. Sometimes it's engagement. It's getting the right people out there to do that engagement. So we work closely with them, as we do with the Field Intelligence Officer for Perth, who basically one of our colleagues based at St Martin's House. He pretty much speaks on a hourly basis at times, depending on what we're looking at. And that's intelligence sharing, usually looking at drug issues and serious organised crime, people who are targeting vulnerable people in our communities. Well, that speed up? Yep, no worries. I think I'm getting there. We talked about our strategy. There you go, I'm getting around because I'm taking too long. Told you I could take hours. That's our strategy. Rather than have a 10-page document that you just see screeds of writing, we take on this new approach that we've done. A lady called Claire Mills came and did this. It was actually very good, and it actually made it a lot better to see how our approaches to things. So we did that strategy, and that's how it looks. This will be shared later on once we get it finalised. That's pretty much the final bit there, but getting the draft out to other people. So essentially, the Safer Communities team, I feel, are made up of people who want to do their job, very passionate about doing their job. Everyone sees that they enjoy working with us within the team. We think we're accessible. We want to keep in touch with people who use our service. If we can share information with people, we'll share as much as we can without breaches of data protection. So we'll tell you as much as we can, but obviously some things we won't be able to explain to you because we're not allowed to. We do call upon other agencies and look at different tactical options we have for dealing with various complaints that we deal with. And if we get it wrong, we'll hold our hands up and say, yeah, we got it wrong, and let's try and not do it the next time. I'm not going to say we won't do it the next time. There will be hopefully not the same mistake, but we do acknowledge that we do make mistakes and we try to learn from it. And the last one is we'll stick at it. We've had cases, Nicola and Andrea here is a case that we were all involved in, it was so complex, it took a long time to get the right outcome, but we didn't give up. None of us gave up. We kept at it because we knew there was an issue, we knew we had to deal with it, and we got the desired outcome at the end of it, and we got very good feedback from the complainer, who was very aware of the restrictions and what we could and couldn't do, and other agencies that had to play their part. So thank you for letting me speak today. I think that's my record. 10 minutes, bang on maybe?
Maybe 15.
20, sorry. You didn't even have to use a translator, which is good, or perhaps.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Nicola Muirhead. I'm the team leader for the North and South localities and the mobile team as well. So, EBIs. The Estate-Based Initiative Programme has been making environmental improvements to council housing revenue account land and property since it was first introduced 6 years ago. EBIs are projects that are carried out on communal ground or property owned by the HRA. Projects must demonstrate sustainability, contribute to community safety, and or improve the amenity of the local area whilst increasing tenant involvement. Every locality team has its own EBI budget, and a member of the Tenant Resident Participation Team, TRP, because it's a bit of a tongue twister, is allocated to a locality, and this supports the arrangements of walkabouts and recording tenants' and residents' wishes. A nomination form is also published in our On the House magazine. The TRP team, locality housing team, elected members and other council stakeholders are all invited to attend walkabouts along with tenants. The EBI walkabouts are carried out in spring, and following on from the walkabouts, proposed ideas, comments, photographs and projects are all collated and put onto a spreadsheet and determined at an EBI update meeting. This then allows for a priority setting report for all the identified projects to be written up by the TRP team. The TRP worker will then advise the community of the outcome of the walkabout via various range of methods, and once a project has the go-ahead from tenants, the housing officer is responsible for arranging the implementation of the EBI projects within their areas. Once the works have been completed, the TRP worker will arrange for a final post-inspection involving tenants, locality housing team representation and any other partners involved with the project. The work so far. So during 2022, so far we have met with council tenants all over Perth and Kinross to create a list of enhancements and improvements in their areas. Let's look at some of the EBI projects undertaken in the North, Letham, City and South localities. In North, 5 walkabouts were undertaken across the locality in Aberfeldy, Pitlochry, Rattray, Kettins, Meagle and Upper Blairgowrie. These were also publicised through social media to give tenants and residents the opportunity to be present. The most visually effective impact has been within the communal areas at Picture House Court, which has not been maintained by either the tenants or PKC for some considerable time. A comprehensive project was undertaken to improve the area. This included refurbishing the patio areas, creating privacy areas with fencing, partnership working with animal welfare officers to address the dog fouling issue, and painting the seating and planters. EBI budgets have also been used to benefit resident groups within our localities who are working together to improve the communal areas around their blocks. 2 of these groups have also been issued with gift cards, enabling them to purchase plants and other garden-related equipment. In Letham, traditionally there had been banners depicting Welcome to Letham some decades past. These had been taken down during some refurbishments and the brackets were left empty. A competition was funded by EBI with local school children to design new welcome banners. 8 winning designs were chosen. Welcome to Letham was the chosen theme, and these were put in place during the summer of 2022. This has fulfilled a 10-year quest to put something on the brackets at Rannoch Road shops, and the designs were made and chosen as a result of a competition run by the Residents Association. Council tenants were involved in promoting the competition and choosing the designs. This project involved 3 schools, members of the Letham Resident Association, the In-Betweeners Youth Group, and the Older People's Group, who all contributed to the project. In City, at Dunkeld Road, new housing had been built directly behind our tenants' communal garden areas, leaving the garden exposed. It was also overgrown and neglected. New privacy fencing was erected enclosing the whole area, and as this is a phased project, the next phase is to clear up the overgrowth, install new paths and new whirligigs. Constant liaison with the tenants has helped the design and scope of this project. Also in City at Gilsey Place, new acoustic fencing was installed as requested by tenants adjacent to an industrial estate. Feedback has been that this has alleviated the noise and intrusive headlights of delivery trucks at night. In South, 8 EBI walkabouts were undertaken across the South locality team, and one of the most common issues raised by residents on EBI walkabouts is parking facilities. In Arnott Road, Blackford, where parking was identified to be an issue, this was one of our larger EBI projects. Gardens and a pavement were removed to make a number of new spaces as requested by the local residents. Also in South, in Marshall Place and Milner Thorpe, residents also raised concerns regarding a cul-de-sac where parking was unsafe and bin lorries couldn't get turned properly. The outcome for this EBI project was a new lay-by, which has expanded car parking capacity by 8 cars and made space for bin lorries to turn safely. Several site visits with residents were carried out to achieve this outcome. Tenants decided on the location of the lay-by and were in constant dialogue with the contractor and housing team throughout this project. So far in 2022, 66 projects have been agreed. The figures have actually changed slightly since I've done this. I'm actually going to go off the new figures. So far in 2022, 72 projects have now been agreed. 43 projects have commenced, 13 are completed, and 16 are waiting to commence. Over 90% of the EBI budget has been committed to date. The EBI budgets and projects are monitored regularly, both within the locality teams and at wider EBI meetings, to ensure the projects are being quoted for, implemented, and the timescales are met. Feedback from the tenants so far is that in Blackford, the parking area has made it safer for pedestrians, opened up the road for the bin lorries and made a huge difference to the street. In North Muirton, the soundproofing fence is just what residents wanted, and residents felt that they were listened to. In Aberfeldy, where the new signage was installed, one resident thanked us as the postman now knows where to find them. And in Letham, where new fenced bin areas were installed, residents advised that the area is now tidy. And that concludes my short, Sandy, presentation for EBIs. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, there's one.
Oh. Hi.
My name is Trisha and I am in the city centre and I'm tenant for Tenant and Ross. We had an EBI interest in where I am. Just before COVID started, part of the work was done.
Okay.
It's never been finished.
Okay.
I brought it to the attention of several people, including Councillor Ahern, just recently. I said, these people got paid to do a job, why haven't they finished it? Now, the COVID, we don't want to hear about it anymore. Just get on your feet, get up and get the work finished.
Yeah.
Now, these people have been paid for that job, but it's not finished.
Okay, just to confirm, contractors are not paid until the works are actually completed. But what
There's something wrong somewhere because they haven't completed it where I am.
Okay, that's fine. I can feed that back to the locality coordinator, which is Sophie Webber, and Andrea McCallum's here as well as the team leader for the city area as well.
One of the concerns is that when they put up a wooden fence, this seems to be an era of wooden fences hiding everything. You know, they put up a wooden fence, but they put it about 2 feet in the wrong place. So part of our garden is now in the Queen's Hotel car park. So if we want to go and see how the flowers are growing or the roots or whatever, we have to go round and into the Queen's Hotel car park because they put the fence in the wrong place. Nobody seems to be bothered whether you wouldn't do that if it was your own private house, would you?
No, you wouldn't. And I do recall that project, and my understanding is that was part of the wider consultation and part of the residents' wishes at the time. Judy Barrow was actually overseeing that project at the time, because at that particular point I was in the city team. But I can certainly follow that up for you when I get back to the office and get somebody to provide you with an update.
And since they put the fence up along the pavement side between the Pomerian Flats and Cross Street, it's just over by the garages, which had a refurbishment. One has a tree growing up front of it, so it's never been cleaned up since the fence went up. It's an absolute mess. I have requested several times that we get it cleaned up, but nobody seems to bother. People just dump stuff out their cars and whatever just into the bushes. Even the grit bin, which I requested last year, be brought from down the banking and put up on the pavement for use, is still lying there.
Okay.
Councillor Ahern, he knows about it. Sadly, he didn't want to go down in the grass because his feet were getting wet and he was going to a meeting. I reminded him to bring his wellies and an umbrella the next time. But I would like to see this work finished.
That's fine, that's no problem at all. I can feed that back to the locality coordinator. Yeah.
Not just, you know, anybody.
No, that's fine. I'll arrange for a call back for you with an update.
Okay, thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Oh, Sorry, Nikki, one more question.
Lynn speaking.
Hi, Lynn.
You know how the backlog, the COVID backlog, is still apparent? Lots of staff have moved on or still ill or not come back to work. Is this situation tending to improve, or are we still under the power of the backlog?
Are you talking about repairs, or are you talking about EBI work?
Anything.
So in relation to EBI work, we are having delays in terms of contractors carrying out works at the minute, but that's just because obviously even the contractors we do use and our own teams have got a backlog of works, but they are getting through them as quickly as possible. We have a programme for dates and works are scheduled in, and that's what we go with. So at the minute we're not really getting a backlog as such, we're getting through the works, hence why so many projects have already commenced. And we do aim to have all 70 odd projects completed by the end of the financial year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just conscious of time, we're a wee bit behind. So the last but not least, we've got Andrea to give us a brief overview on the older persons housing project.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrea McCallum. I'm the team leader with responsibility for our older persons housing team amongst a number of other teams. Today I am here to speak about our older persons housing wellbeing project. Just to give you a little bit of background, in our older persons housing team we have 7 sheltered housing units and 3 retirement sites. All of these have communal lounges and kitchens where we carry out activities and events for our tenants that live within these units. The Wellbeing Outreach Service was designed to offer to expand the opportunity for tenants living in the communities round about to come in and join in with these events that are already happening. We recognise that, as many people have mentioned before, COVID has hit significantly, and there are lots of people living in communities who were through COVID quite isolated, and it highlighted to us that there's opportunity to be working more closely and inviting these people in to be included, to be more socially engaged with people and the things that are going on. As I said, I've touched on that. We also encourage any kind of local workers, carers and our partners to spend time with their service users or the people that they're working with in our communal lounges, and also to help them to attend the activities that are going on. Okay, so the aims of the project, it's about improving wellbeing and reducing isolation, as I've said already, providing assistance and advice to people on an individual basis, whether that be about housing advice, budgeting, aids or adaptations. It could be for a range of different kind of housing related matters. Digital support and assistance links with the work that Kev is doing that he's already spoken about, trying to kind of expand the number of tenants that are using digital technology and the use of the smart technology that's out there. Referrals to other services such as community alarms, occupational therapists, welfare rights, whatever that individual tenant's needs are, it is very much person-centred and tailored to their individual needs. Anything in relation to the management of their home, if there are issues with hoarding, for example, any safeguarding issues, we pick up on these things as well. Vulnerability concerns, so adult protection, health and safety issues, fire risks or debt management. So it covers a very wide range of matters. We also, the aim of the project is to build links. It's one of the kind of fundamentals of the project, is building key links with other internal teams, agencies and services. Without them, it's really difficult to do what we do. Okay, so a little bit about the work so far. Oops, sorry, I've gone a wee bit ahead. In summer 2021, we welcomed the 2 staff who are delivering this project. one full-time member of staff and one part-time outreach support officer. Our part-time officer, Caris, is sitting at the back there. Some of you may have had opportunity to speak to her. So during the summer of 2021, they developed leaflets and posters to promote the service. They met a lot of colleagues internally and externally to promote the work that they were going to be doing and to ask for referrals for any people that they were working with who might be isolated, who could benefit from the project that we've got. The initial focus was in Invergowrie and at Sanda Court in North Muirton. We had to limit, because there were only one full-time and a part-time outreach officer, we couldn't have them working through the whole of Perth and Kinross. So we chose Invergowrie and Sanda Court as the starting for the project. So any tenants over the age of 50 that lived in that community could benefit from the work that Caris and Gordon were doing at that time. Autumn 2021, the staff very much concentrated their efforts. They'd done a lot of their promotion by that time, so their efforts were promoted in the retirement areas of North Muirton and Invergowrie. They very much got to know the staff that were working there and the tenants that lived in those communities. And they started to receive referrals from community, from local staff for tenants that were living in those areas. Okay, so moving on to winter last year, there was a partnership developed with NHS. The staff in the outreach service applied for funding from the NHS to start monthly lunch clubs in both Invergowrie and North Muirton, and were successful in receiving that funding. So retirement tenants and tenants in the surrounding community benefited from the regular lunch club. It's a monthly lunch club. Those lunch clubs are still going. And the idea was that there would be social eating, socialising, chatting, there would be some entertainment. But as well as that, it was an opportunity to speak to people about nutrition. Were they looking after themselves? Was there an opportunity to kind of give advice on that? Okay, that's a wee picture of the Invergowrie Lunch Club where the ladies were all having a great time. You can see that they were really enjoying themselves. The next stage was spring of this year. We then extended the project into sheltered housing units within the Perth City area. So again, staff reached out to all the local partner organisations and workers to again remind them and to promote the service and to encourage referrals into the service. Our staff continued to work with our tenants and our local partners, and we produce a monthly What's On calendar within our sheltered housing and retirement sites, and that's an opportunity to say what events and activities will be happening. That's then shared around widely so that other workers can see what's happening and encourage their clients to come along. Okay, autumn 2022, which is where we are now. Sadly, earlier in the summer, we lost the full-time officer. He went off to work elsewhere within the council. So we are in the throes of recruiting. We have somebody for the full-time post, and we're just waiting for them to start. I would think within the next few weeks they'll be starting in post. But my thanks go out to Caris, who has, on a part-time basis, been carrying on with this project, and she's been doing a great job. So we'll continue to build on the work that's been going on, and continue to support tenants in the communities and encourage them to come in and then join in with the event. Okay, so the benefits so far of this project. The team have helped 15 tenants on a one-to-one basis. The lunch clubs in North Muirton and Invergowrie are attended each time by about 15 to 20 tenants from within the older person service, but also those from the community as well. They've been a great success, and they have brought people together. And our tenants have told us that the benefit for them is they enjoy socialising. It's something that they really look forward to. They enjoy getting out and meeting new people. They enjoy being involved in different activities that are going on and enjoying some normality, especially after COVID and the various lockdowns. Okay, and this is specific feedback from some of the tenants that have benefited from this service. So I've only just moved to the area and I've only been to the church once for their gathering. So it's lovely to come here. I really was nervous about coming, but I am so glad that I came. It gets me out of the house as I would be sitting in otherwise. I can come and have a chat and find out what else is happening. I really enjoy coming here every month. It breaks up my week and I get to see my friends and enjoy a meal. So that's a little bit about the service, and if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them. Gerard.
If people are older, people, some disabled people, I'm not so old, but basically old people. Now, we used to, if you could cast your mind back, have a community room. But that was taken away, oh gosh, about 35, 40 years ago. Now, it would be nice actually if the council could work towards setting up something there. Now, I know the ex-service clubs that we talk about because it's got stairs, but I know that the Nazarene Trinity Church, call it what one will, has been interested in having things with the flats. So I don't know if anything could be, consultation could be done with the church to see, there's rooms at the other side, to see if they could set up some sort of a community thing, even once a month. There used to be something called Open Door, but it was long gone. It is from there, because I'm sure a lot of tenants would appreciate some place to go. It is from there.
Yeah, okay, I do appreciate that. I'm here today to talk about a very specific project with a very specific remit. I hear what you're saying. I think there is a lot of other stuff out there. A lot of our other teams within the council are looking at things like social isolation. There are clubs out there. There's a lot of talk about the cosy spaces because you know, we've talked about the cost of living and energy crisis and the amount of money people are spending on heating. So there's a lot going on out in communities in terms of inviting people in. I don't know exactly where all that's going on. I know that there are Cath, for example, the St Mark's Church in Letham. They were looking to do a Thursday afternoon, evening, inviting people in, come along, have a bite to eat. But it's also an opportunity to meet with other people, socialise.
So there is roughly about 20 cosy spaces, and all the information will be on our website, and we'll make sure through our social media that we'll get that out as much as possible. So that information that Andrew's just pulling together.
Not everybody did a website.
I appreciate that, but I'm saying it's going on the website, but we'll get that disseminated through other means as well. But there are, just like what you've described there, we have recognised that people need to come together, particularly when the cost of living crisis.
So that could be shared with you, Jerry. Thank you for your question.
Why did you get funding from the NHS when it's in dire straits already?
Caris, maybe you could come in there. Specific money that the NHS had, it was with the focus on nutrition, but we're working with older people. I don't know if you want to say more about that because it's you that applied for the funding. I think if they're in yes, there are areas where they're in dire straits, but that funding was very much available for exactly the type of project that we have worked on in partnership with them. Do you want to add any more, Caris, to that?
That's it, what Angie has said. There was money available to raise awareness of malnutrition with older people, and I was contacted by a lady from the NHS to see whether I could provide some social eating advice about nutrition and malnutrition. So I applied for the funding and we were very successful, and it's hopefully going to continue for another year or two.
Thank you.
Would it not have been better if the people that were wanted it involved put something towards it and go from there.
I think it's prevention, that's what they're looking at, so it's about prevention instead of what we're doing just now. The crisis in the NHS is reactive, so it's small pots of money, you're not talking massive amount, it's about money coming together and making bigger outcomes for people, but we hear what you're saying there.
It's an older generation that you're doing this for, right? From 50 upwards or 60 upwards?
Yep.
I think it's because from the research, there's a lot of evidence and research, so there's a big increase in malnutrition in older people, so it's trying to be very preventative to stop things like falls and other things that come along when older people are suffering from malnutrition.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd just like to, probably we're a wee bit over time, but just like to close this conference by saying a massive thank you to everyone that's contributed to today's event, your attendance here but also online, to the staff that have delivered the really informative presentations, to the officers that have been manning the stalls, giving really good information. Without all of you, today's conference would not have been possible. We will face challenges over the next couple of months, be it financially or on our health and well-being. However, I'd like to highlight that as a housing service, we are here for you and we will continue to support you as much as we can through these difficult times by offering practical assistance, sharing advice, knowledge, and of course being there for when you need it the most. I would encourage you not to be afraid to make contact or ask for advice or assistance, and if possible to encourage your neighbours to do so. So what next? As Michelle mentioned in our presentation earlier on, voting forms will be sent out to all current and prospective tenants, and they should be landing on your front doorsteps or doormats within the next couple of days, depending on postage. And these have been issued to all our 7,000, roughly 900 tenants. And that feedback and today's feedback and feedback we've received as part of our consultation process will be pulled together to prepare a report for our Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee, which Councillor McEwen chairs, recommending a potential rent increase that reflects all the feedback that we've received. And it will also include any changes, if required, regarding any new legislation that the Scottish Government might decide to implement from the 1st of April regarding any rent caps or extensions and things like that. I've one final thing to ask before I close this conference, and if you have any feedback on today's conference, please let us know. Your feedback will help us to shape the way we work in the future and continue to ensure that the content you receive from us continues to stay on point and helps you to navigate these difficult times and gives an awareness of what we're striving to achieve as a service. And the last point, just take care and have a safe journey home. Thank you.